Nobody walked into this camp under more pressure than Caitlin Clark, and nobody walked out with more control of the future. On the surface, it was just another USA basketball training camp. A few practices, a few evaluations, coaches watching quietly from the sideline. But underneath that calm exterior, something much bigger was happening. This wasn't about shaking off rust or getting back into rhythm. This was a silent power shift. One player arrived with questions hanging over her name, doubts fueled by injuries and time away. Another arrived with hype, expectations, and a growing online fan base. By the end of day 2, those narratives didn't just change, they flipped completely. For months, the conversation around Clark had drifted in a dangerous direction. The rookie who once shattered records and bent defenses to her will had barely been seen. Injuries stacked up, games disappeared from the schedule. And when a generational player goes quiet for long enough, the basketball world doesn't wait patiently. It starts wondering. Was that historic rookie season the ceiling? Had the league already caught up? And more importantly, when the lights came back on, would she still be the same player? That uncertainty followed her straight into camp, even if no one said it out loud. Every rep mattered. Every possession was being evaluated. This wasn't just a workout, it was an unspoken test. At the same time, others saw opportunity. Camp is where roles are claimed and hierarchies are formed, and some players arrived believing this was their moment to move up the ladder. Among them was Angel Reese, a name that's generated non-stop buzz, debate, and expectation. Fans expected fireworks. Analysts watched closely. The assumption was simple. This would be a battle for the spotlight. But what actually unfolded didn't look like a competition at all. It looked like separation. Quiet, undeniable separation that didn't need trash talk or headlines to announce itself. Because while some players were trying to prove they belonged, Clark was doing something far more dangerous. She was making everyone else better. The tempo shifted when she touched the floor. The reads came faster. The spacing made sense. Coaches leaned forward instead of checking clipboards. This wasn't just a comeback story in progress. This was a statement being delivered in real time. And the most important part? She wasn't forcing it. No hero ball, no trying to remind people who she was. She played like someone who already knew where this was heading. By the end of the first few sessions, the conversation inside the gym no longer matched the noise outside of it. This wasn't about who looked good in drills, it was about who the program naturally bent around. USA Basketball Women's National Team isn't built on hype or social media moments. It's built on trust, control, and players who elevate everyone on the floor. And without a single announcement, without a single headline, it became clear that one player wasn't just back, she was positioning herself as the foundation of what comes next. And that's where this story really begins, because once you understand what this camp actually revealed, you start to see why some futures are suddenly accelerating, while others may already be narrowing. What made this moment so heavy for Caitlin Clark wasn't just the injuries, it was the silence that followed them. When a star goes down once, people wait. When it happens again, they worry. But when it keeps happening, the tone changes. The conversation shifts from sympathy to skepticism, even if no one wants to admit it. Clark's sophomore season didn't unravel all at once. It chipped away at her rhythm piece by piece. One issue faded, another popped up. Just enough recovery to give hope, followed by another setback that pulled it away again. 13 games, that was it. 13 appearances after a rookie season that completely rewrote expectations. For a player used to answering questions with dominance, there was suddenly nothing to point to except potential and memory. And that's where the real pressure crept in, not from critics yelling online, but from the unspoken reality of elite sports. Time doesn't pause for anyone, not even generational talent. While Clark was rehabbing, adjusting, and trying to get her body right, the league kept moving. New names emerged, new narratives formed. Every missed game gave space for doubt to grow, and the more time passed, the louder those doubts became. People started asking questions they never would have a year earlier. Could she stay healthy? Would the burst come back? Was the speed that made her dangerous still there, or had it been dulled by months of caution and recovery? 5 months away from competitive basketball is an eternity at this level. It's not just about conditioning or timing, it's about trust. Trust in your body, trust in your instincts, trust that when you plant your foot and explode, something won't go wrong again. Clark admitted that part herself. Injuries isolate you. You're around the team, but you're not really in it. You watch instead of react. You think instead of flow. And when you finally returned, you're not just proving something to coaches or fans, you're proving it to yourself. That's a weight most people never see, but it was there the moment she stepped onto the floor at camp. What made this camp different from any normal return was the timing. This wasn't a casual tune-up or a low-stakes run. This was the start of a new Olympic cycle. Evaluations weren't theoretical, they were foundational. Coaches weren't just asking who looks good now, but who can be trusted 2, 4, even 6 years down the line. Every possession was a data point. Every hesitation mattered. Clark wasn't fighting for attention. She was fighting the idea that her window might be closing faster than expected. And that kind of pressure doesn't always show up in box scores. Sometimes it shows up in how a player carries themselves before the first whistle even blows.
Walking into that gym, Clark wasn't just returning from injury. She was stepping back into a conversation that had quietly moved on without her. The only way back into it wasn't noise or promises. It was control. And the moment she finally put the ball on the floor, that's exactly where the story began to change. The shift didn't happen after a speech or a highlight play. It happened almost immediately, before anyone had time to overanalyze it. The first time Caitlin Clark touched the ball, the tension that had been hanging over the gym quietly disappeared. Not because she forced anything, and not because she tried to remind people who she was, but because everything suddenly looked normal, natural, comfortable. The movements were clean, the reads were quick. There was no hesitation in her steps, no second guessing in her decisions. For a player coming off months away from competition, that alone spoke volumes. What stood out wasn't one shot falling or one pass connecting, it was the rhythm. Clark didn't play like someone testing her body. She played like someone who trusted it. She pushed the pace without forcing it, changing speeds at will, keeping defenders off balance before they even realized they were behind. When she pulled up, it was decisive. When she passed, it was early and on time. Coaches weren't watching her to see if she could keep up. They were watching how quickly the game bent around her. That's when the evaluation quietly shifted from, "Is she ready?" to, "How do we build with this?" The nervous energy she admitted to feeling didn't last long. She said the moment she started warming up, everything felt familiar again, and that familiarity showed. The ball didn't stick, teammates moved with more confidence when she was on the floor. Spacing improved, cuts came earlier, fast breaks actually looked like fast breaks. These are the small details coaches notice instantly, the ones that don't show up on stat sheets but decide who runs the offense and who waits their turn. By the end of the first session, it was clear this wasn't a slow ramp-up. Clark wasn't easing back into form. She had arrived already in it. Her pace alone created advantages. Defenders were forced to react instead of anticipate. Passing lanes opened that didn't exist for anyone else. And the most telling part? She wasn't dominating the ball to do it. She was directing traffic, pulling defenders just far enough out of position to let others eat. That's the kind of impact that doesn't need volume to be loud. Observers started noticing something else too, the smile. It wasn't performative or forced. It was the kind of expression that shows up when a player realizes their body is finally doing what their mind is asking again. That joy carried through every rep, every transition push, every read made a half-second faster than expected. The question marks that followed her into camp didn't vanish because someone said they should. They vanished because the game itself answered them. And once that happened, once the room collectively understood that Clark wasn't just healthy, but fully herself again, The camp stopped being about whether she belonged. It became about how everyone else would adjust to her presence and who would thrive alongside it. What made the coaching staff lock in so quickly on Caitlin Clark wasn't hype or reputation. At this level, none of that matters once the ball goes up. What matters is control. Control of pace, control of space, control of moments that can swing games before they ever reach the scoreboard. And almost immediately, Clark showed she had all of it. She wasn't just playing within the system, she was organizing it. Every possession with her on the floor felt intentional, like there was a plan unfolding in real time. That's why comments from people like Kara Lawson carried so much weight. When Lawson said Clark looked good on both ends, it wasn't coach speak. Defense is where trust is earned in USA basketball settings. Anyone can score and practice. Not everyone competes, communicates, and stays connected on the other end. Clark was sliding her feet, reading passing lanes, and rotating early, not late. She wasn't conserving energy or picking spots. She was fully engaged, and that told coaches she wasn't protecting her body anymore. She trusted it. Then there was the decision-making. Clark didn't hunt highlights, she hunted advantages. When the defense showed help, she punished it. When they stayed home, she took what they gave her. That balance is rare, especially from players coming off long layoffs. Most try to prove they're still dangerous. Clark proved she was still dependable. The ball moved faster with her. Teammates looked more confident taking shots they might hesitate on with someone else running the offense. That's the kind of influence coaches recognize immediately because it translates to international play, where mistakes get exposed fast.
The reactions from the sidelines said more than any quote ever could. Nods instead of notes, smiles instead of silence. The staff wasn't debating whether Clark could help, they were watching how high the ceiling could go with her in control. That's a critical difference. At camps like this, some players are fighting to stay in the conversation, others quietly ended. Clark did the latter without saying a word. Her presence simplified decisions that are usually complicated. And once that trust is established, it tends to snowball. Coaches start pairing you with different lineups to see what works. They put you in tougher situations to see how you respond. Clark didn't flinch. If anything, she thrived.